Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder. My next guest has 9 years of experience as both a public and private sector analyst and a very impressive resume. She has a Master's of Science in Criminal Justice with a concentration in crime analysis. She has a Master's in Cybersecurity with a concentration in forensics and intelligence. She's certified expert in cyber investigations. She's certified in workplace violence and threat specialist, and she's a certified law enforcement analyst. And just for fun, she's currently getting her master's in public safety with specializing in infectious diseases and infectious diseases control. She's a consultant. She's an instructor. She's a world traveler, hockey player, and even speaks Arabic. Please welcome to the program, Sally Tarabah. Sally, how are we doing today?
Oh, we're doing good. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, how is home life under the COVID quarantine for you?
I have officially started speaking to my cats. They have not started speaking back yet, but I'll let you know when they do.
Yes, I guess when it's a two-way conversation, that's when you're probably going to be in trouble. So you have a lot currently going on. You are an analyst, an adjunct professor, and a security analyst consultant. Plus you're in school. So how do you make time for everything?
You know, it's all about planning. I know that I'm learning, for example, medical terminology. So for one day, I'm going to memorize things that begin with the letter A, for example. So I know that that's my plan for today. I teach on Thursdays, so I make sure that at 4:05, whatever I'm working on goes away, and I just start focusing on teaching. It's just about compartmentalizing and ensuring that I have time for everything.
Wow. First things first, right?
Of course.
As a security analyst consultant, what is your main role there?
I used to work there full time, but the company that I worked for was bought out by a different company. So I was an analyst mostly focusing on ensuring the pharmaceutical products get from point A to point B safely, following up on the GPS tracking, following up on the brokers following the rules set for them. But as the company was bought out by another one, I was told that myself, my boss as well, would not be continuing in our role with the company, with a new company. Now what I do is I run the same reports as before, just to help with the transition. It's a couple of hours a week, but mostly it's just running reports. There's very little analytical skill needed since I started my other job.
And then let's get into your other job then. What are you analyzing in your other position?
So I work for the New Jersey Judiciary. I'm one of the many analysts that the judiciary employs, and we focus on looking at things in the court system. So, for example, right now, one of the things I am looking at is whether reports have the domestic violence indicator as yes, and comparing that to last year to see if there's been an increase or a decrease. Looking at the number of tickets that are issued for people violating the order on a statewide level. Those are just some of the things I'm working on now.
So the judiciary wants to look at their patterns and trends in order to make decisions for the future. Sounds pretty par for the course.
That's pretty much it.
And then what are you teaching?
I am currently an adjunct professor at Rowan University, which is a university in South Jersey. I am teaching computer forensics, introduction course, as well as writing a class to be taught in the fall semester for ethical hacking.
And computer forensics, that gets into pulling evidence off the computer? Is that what that entails?
So I teach them how to look at files that are corrupt, how to look at files hidden within a file. Steganography is probably one of my favorite subjects ever. And I make it fun. The students love it. One of the labs is they have to solve a murder, and I send them on pretty much a scavenger hunt throughout the internet. So It's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Do you have a favorite software for computer forensics?
WinHex. Essentially, it's a hex editor, so it lets you look at the file the way that a computer would see it in hexadecimal.
I want to take you back a little bit to the beginning of your career, because in pretty short time span, you went from being a crash analyst at a police department to a crime analyst analyzing violent crime at a police department, and then you made the leap to the private sector analyzing retail data. Just kind of take me back and talk a little bit about each stop and what you learned and, what was different from one step to another.
It's all about growing. And I'm one of those people, I'm not satisfied doing just one thing. I always want more. I used to work in Vermont as a crash analyst, and I absolutely loved it. It was my first quote-unquote adult job. I worked for an amazing lieutenant who believed in everything I did. The traffic department believed in my statistics. It was a great job, but I wanted more. So I went from Vermont to Cincinnati. And again, I got to work with violent crime. So it was a little bit more interesting data, for lack of a better term. But again, I had a great police chief that believed in it. It was a great opportunity. And then another opportunity propped up. I was contacted by a major retailer that said, apply for this job. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a try. Why not? So applied for it, got it. And had a great time. From that, I stepped away from analytics for a little bit and did physical security. And I got to essentially do my own investigations instead of just handing the data to investigators. And had a lot of fun with it. But then the retail life got to be a little bit much. So I went back to the public sector after that.
So do you prefer the public sector?
I get asked that, and I really don't know. It just depends. I like the stability of the public sector, but I also like the spontaneity of the private sector. Working retail, you were working on Thanksgiving. You were working on the day after. There was no such thing as a day off. I used to get phone calls at 2 a.m. because one of the stores that I oversaw was robbed. As an analyst for a police department, I've never really had that happen to me. So it got to be a little bit much, but at the same time, it was just excitement and my adrenaline, it fulfilled my adrenaline rush.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you and I have a connection with Cincinnati because you replaced me at Cincinnati. I was the first civilian crime analyst that they had ever hired, and you followed suit, replacing me just a couple months after I left. So I was thinking that you and I probably have some people that really made a good impression on us, and some people that, we like to swear under our breath at. How did Cincinnati treat you overall, do you feel?
I mean, it could have gone better. I think there were just a lot of opinions at times, but the people that I worked with, the police chief, they believed in what I had to say. So as long as I had buy-in from the leadership, that took care of a lot of the friction that could have existed otherwise.
Sure. Once I left law enforcement and I went to the private sector, that was the biggest difference. One of the biggest changes for me is not having regular meetings with the highest level of people running the organization. Because up until that point, I always had regular meetings with police chiefs or people running the law enforcement agency that I was working with. Now I work for Vanderbilt Medical Center. I have never been in the same room with the CEO. And that was it was a big change for me that way because I was always talking to the chief prior to that. And then I go from that to never meeting the top dog, so to speak.
Yeah, same. Now that you mention it, it's pretty much the same.
So I want to get into a little bit of a story time. This next segment I call the Earning the Analyst Badge. What I want you to tell us is either a story or two that really gave you the sense of accomplishment and made you feel like, okay, I'm an analyst now. I've earned my analyst badge, so to speak. So what are some stories that you can tell us that involved you earning your analyst badge?
The proudest moment I've ever had as an analyst where I felt like I truly made a difference. I was working as the crash analyst for the state of Vermont. And one of the tasks that I had was essentially looking at historical data and trying to see if there's a lot of crashes in one location, how to prevent crashes from happening. And I have to give credit to the traffic department because they listened, and they, if I were to say to them that this particular section has a lot of speed-related crashes, there was this one corporal, his name was Roy. We always called him Radar Roy. He'd go exactly what I told him. He'd sit there with his radar and he'd start ticketing people, force them to slow down, and it reduced crashes overall. The lieutenant that I worked with, the sergeant, they were all just believers. Whatever, they gave me all the tools I needed, and whatever I said to them, they believed in it and they followed through. And I can say that after working there for 1 year, we were able to reduce fatal crashes, that's motor vehicle fatalities, by over 40% year over year.
Wow.
It was the lowest number since the World War II. Now, of course, they didn't have as cold of a winter as usual, so that also goes into effect, but just the fact that I had a team that believed in me made all the difference.
So was that for the entire state of Vermont? Or was that just within the jurisdiction?
The entire state.
So just kind of, if you could, just go into how you chose the locations, right? Because you obviously had some profile that you developed in which you targeted and you told the corporal where and when to go.
I mean, essentially, it was just looking at historical data, and I would look back at 3, 4, 5 years, and I try to match up the dates as close as I can, see what was going on at that time. Was there a snowstorm that happened? If there was a snowstorm, then I didn't really look at that data as closely as I looked at others. I looked at the reports, and instead of just looking at what the trooper had marked off as the cause of the accident, I looked at the narrative as well and massaged the data a little bit to get it to fit in one of the many buckets that I was measuring. In addition to all of that, putting everything on a map. And I didn't just look at fatal crashes. I looked at any kind of crash. If there was a police report for it, I analyzed it and put everything up on a map and tried to see where the dots clustered.
So that's data-driven decision-making, right? At its finest.
Yes, DDAX.
Oh, yeah. What's DDAX?
I forget. I'd have to look up what it stood for, but traffic is in there.
Yeah. So no, I get that. I get that.
We interrupt your regular broadcast to bring you some important information. DDAX stands for Data-Driven Approaches to Crime and Traffic Safety. DDAX, because everything in law enforcement needs an acronym. And now, back to our show.
And then you had another story regarding the retail that you wanted to tell, right?
So after I went and, helped save lives, I went to the private sectors and helped them save money. One of the tasks that we were told is to go through and try to proactively find people that were scamming the retail company that I worked for. So once a month, back when cell phone contracts were a thing, the cell phone companies, AT&T, Verizon, whoever, would send us the list of all the contracts that they canceled because they deemed that contract was fraudulent. So I would look and I would compile the list and merge all of the cell phone providers together, and I'd start just looking and seeing if there's any pattern. Using Excel, I noticed that there was a Hispanic first name male, Hispanic last name male, born in 83, followed by a female normal name like Rachel, Americanized name, followed with a Hispanic last name born in the 90s. And I saw that those would go into a store, get 3-4 phones each, and they would go to a different store. So I kept seeing that pattern, that name, Hispanic, and then the same birth year, and then an American first name, Hispanic last name, female with a 90s birth year. And I just started tracking all of those, and I pull up the video, and it was always the exact same couple using different names. So then I expanded my search instead of just one state into multiple other states. Since we only have cameras for 30 days, 60 days, depending on the store, I was able to compile a list of 3 states that they went to within those three months. And then I went back even further and looked at that same pattern, and then I was able to actually track them through 26 states over a period of 2 years. Their MO is they would go into a store, they would each sign up for a phone, for a contract, get a couple of phones free of charge, and then they would cancel the contract or somehow be deemed fraudulent by AT&T or Verizon, and then they would, hit multiple stores and pick up 25 phones per trip, about 25 to 30 phones per trip. So when I looked at it on a calendar, every month they would spend 1 week and they would travel to a different state. So not only was I able to track them in the store, I was able to track them on a calendar to see when they're going to travel. And because the retailer that I worked for, part of their promotions was to give out gift cards if you sign up at a or for a cell phone at their location, I was then able to take that gift card and track it back to where they used it. So these two people would go out of their home state to purchase these phones, to get these phones for free. They never hit the state that they're from. And I was able to find that state by tracking the credit card. The gift card. Once I tracked the gift card, I saw that it was used in New York with a credit card. Then using some contacts we had with a credit card, we were able to call the credit card company and they gave us a name. Using the name, I was able to go on Facebook, and now that I had the male based on his credit card, I was able to get the female based on his Facebook activity. So it's pretty cool that I was able to track them for 2 years, almost a little over $250,000 in cell phones. That's not any gift card that they were given, the money lost on that.
Just one follow-up question. So was he using the gift cards in combination with the credit card? And that's how you got the credit card information?
Yeah, he was using the two of them. When they would go to buy groceries, the gift card would be, for example, for $50, but they would have more than that. So they would have to use multiple gift cards. When I traced the gift cards, one of the gift cards was used in conjunction with a credit card.
Very good. And then they only used the gift cards in their home state of New York, and everywhere else they went and got the cell phones. So what were they doing with the cell phones once they had them? Just selling them to different people?
Well, I didn't really know that. I left before the case was concluded. One of the downfalls of working for corporate is you cannot prosecute people. So all we could do is put things on a silver platter, put a bow on it, and give it to police departments and hope that they prosecute. And with a case that spans 26 states, we actually ended up partnering with other retailers that were getting hit by the same couple. And I left shortly after that partnership happened, so I don't really know the conclusion of it.
Just out of curiosity, why can't a corporation prosecute?
It would have to be civil. It wouldn't be criminal because only the state or police have the power to prosecute. But
couldn't they? I guess they, just like anybody else. I guess maybe I'm thinking about this in the wrong context. But just like anybody else, the corporation could go to a police department and file a report.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I was thinking that you were saying that they couldn't even file a report. So that would be weird to me if that was the case.
No, they could file a report and they can say, here's all the evidence that we have, and work with the police department to try to capture the individual. But the corporation itself does not have legal authority to pursue somebody for a crime. They can sue them, but it wouldn't be very good in the news that a big corporation went after an individual person.
I see. Were you doing all this analysis in just Excel?
Pretty much. I did use ArcGIS to map. Once I had all the information gathered, I did do that. And then, by looking at the dates, I used an Excel formula to give them week num, using week num formula. And that gave me, the week that they hit the most, and I was able to map or put that on a calendar. I love Excel.
That's impressive. It seems like a lot of data and a lot of interesting work done in just Excel alone, given the impact and the amount of information that you had to analyze.
I like to think of that as my specialty, going through thousands of lines of data to find that pattern.
Finding that needle in a haystack. Very good.
That's why we went into analytics, because it's fun. It's a puzzle we're trying to solve. If we didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't be crime analysts, right?
There you go. So I want to get into a series of questions, just talking about your philosophy, getting into advice you may have for somebody that's starting as an analyst or wants to become an analyst. You have really got your hands in a lot of cookie jars. I mean, you have a lot of things that you're interested in that you have studied. There's that saying that people have, jack of all trades, master of none. or people might recommend that you specialize in a few fields as opposed to many. What advice would you have to somebody that's, again, either looking to get into the field or is just starting into the field?
It all goes back to data. A lot of people can look at my resume and say that like you said, I've done a lot of things. They're not really related. But when you sit down and think about it, it's all data. I'm analyzing data. It doesn't matter what kind of data it is. In the end, you're analyzing data. So I analyze crime data. I analyze crash data. I've analyzed, I think, pharmaceutical data. I've analyzed whatever you can think of. It's been analyzed, but it's data. That's what connects everything. So if you're just starting out and you love data, it doesn't matter what it is. Don't limit yourself to just one. The more types of data you can analyze, the stronger you will be as a candidate. And then if you do get bored, for lack of a better term, at one place, having that strong background of I can analyze any kind of data is going to help you move to a different place.
What advice would you have for someone on how to clearly explain some very complex ideas? You'd mentioned that millions of records and a ton of data that you have to sift through. You have to summarize that and be able to communicate it clearly. What's your philosophy in terms of communication?
Well, you have to make the end user understand the cleanliness of the data. First and foremost, we all live by this as an analyst, garbage in, garbage out. You have to be able to fully back up your data and say, my findings are this way because of A or because of B. Or I always like to add a number on the bottom, which says I was able to analyze, or I was not able to analyze X records out of Y because of this. Add that as a footnote. So when people say, wow, this seems really high. So one such example is I'm comparing things that are entered by police versus a court user. So a way to do that is to look at the first two digits of the username. But some of them don't fit in either bucket, and there's a couple of hundred records. So I always say, out of the blank total records, blank number could not be placed in either or because of this reason. So the people understand the data that I'm giving them. Decisions are made based on the data, and you have to be fastidious over it. You have to be able to obsess over the details.
One last topic I want to talk to you about in terms of what you're studying now. So you're studying epidemiology.
Yeah.
How does that link to the rest of the degrees that you've already obtained? Or is it totally different?
It's both. It links to it and it's totally different because now I'm analyzing health data. Really, epidemiology is I'm focusing on infectious diseases, but it's essentially how the disease or the infection travels from point A to point B, and being able to ask the right questions to somebody who's infected. You know, what store did you go to? Who did you come in contact with? And being able to map that data to try to figure out either who patient zero is or how the disease is traveling from person to person. And looking at it right now, from COVID's perspective, we know that it started off in China, and then you can see people who got on a plane and all the different places they went to. So it's really analyzing that data, the travel data. It's all about asking the right questions, and that's what analysis is. You have data sets, you have to go through it, and you have to ask the right question to answer whatever it is you're being asked to answer.
It seems to me, though, that in a lot of regards with your past jobs, you pretty much had a whole database at your disposal to go to. And in terms of this epidemiology, I mean, most of this isn't just sitting in some data warehouse somewhere. This is something that needs to go out, identify the right people, and ask the right question, just as you discussed. So that seems to me like a particularly difficult challenge that's different from anything that you've ever done.
And that's why I'm doing it, because I want this new challenge. I've been given the data and I've had to clean it up, but now I get to actually put the data in myself. And that to me just sounds exciting. It's a new frontier.
Where do we go forward with COVID in terms of epidemiology?
Well, my personal opinion is, again, looking at history and how things have happened in the past and just looking at other diseases. And there is going to be a second wave, most likely in the summer or in the winter, and it's going to coincide with the flu season because that's what it's closest to. And people think of COVID as a brand new disease. It's not. It's really SARS 2.0. It's just a mutated, stronger version of SARS.
I guess if it was up to you, what policies would you like to see come out of this?
I'm not an expert. Ask me in 2 years. But I think we do have to get some herd immunity. It wouldn't be for everybody. So if somebody is at a high risk, they shouldn't be going out and working. But those who've already had the disease and have successfully fought it off, or those who are asymptomatic, should start going out and opening and everything, because we do need the economy to keep going. But we do also need people who are at high risk to stay at home so that they can stay safe. It's about finding that balance between the two.
Totally agree. And I think that's the difficulty. I think that's what so many people are struggling with. Where is that balance between overall public safety and overall society functioning? It's that balance that I think we're really struggling with, and nobody, from what I have read and heard, have not been able to pinpoint exactly what it should look like.
And nobody will unless we're able to test people. We need to have more people tested. We're a first world country. There's no reason we don't have more tests to test our population. Once we're able to test more people, then we'll know truly how many are asymptomatic. They're saying that this disease has a mortality rate of 3%. Okay, that's relatively high, but again, how many people are asymptomatic and don't know it? Because that's going to decrease that 3% to possibly 1% to possibly less than that.
Very interesting. And you said you're 2 years away?
2 years away.
Well, I wish you luck in that endeavor. Very good. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to lighten up a little bit. I want to talk with you about hockey and world traveling. This is Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Sean Bair, and I would like to suggest that everybody go learn programming. I think that's the one thing that has carried me through all the different aspects of my life. And if you learn some programming, you'll better understand the application that you use, and who knows, you might even be able to write your own application. Good luck.
So this is Sam, and I want to let you know that it's okay to talk to strangers. Obviously not if you are 4 or if you're walking alone at night or in the woods. But in general, if you're just out in your day-to-day life or you're traveling or whatever, talk to somebody, talk to strangers. It makes you a more interesting person because it gives you more perspective on life. Everyone is walking around with an interesting story. So many people will defy your expectations when you see someone and you make certain assumptions about them, whether they're conscious or unconscious. I love the moment when you realize you were wrong. It's a great feeling, and I think it makes your life richer in general. You know, if you're too shy, then maybe just read Humans of New York. That might help you to understand other people's experiences. But I'm just here to say, don't not talk to strangers.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking with Sally Tarabah, and she was going over her very impressive resume, and we wanted to come back and go into the lighter side of things. And you are a hockey player, and which I find very impressive. Tell me, when did you get interested in hockey?
I'm originally from Detroit, and Detroit, as you may or may not know, has the best hockey team in the world, because they're just awesome. Not this year or last year, but previously they've been a really good team. I just never got into other sports, but I watched hockey and I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this. I literally went out, grabbed a couple of skates, rented them, got on the ice, fell, got up, fell again, and then just started learning. Took a risk and just fell in love with it. It's an awesome sport. So
you never skated before that point?
No, this was in my mid-20s. So I've only been skating about 10 years. Sorry.
Wow. That's impressive that just one day you decided to be a hockey player and went out and decided to skate. How much more of a learning curve was it, learning how to skate at 20 as opposed to learning as a child?
There's a huge learning curve. I play right now with people who are just starting and they're in their 40s, and I think it's the coolest thing ever. But it's just like any other thing. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish it.
You're in a travel league. So talk a little bit about just the overall schedule, traveling, costs, because I know some guys that are in hockey leagues, just rec leagues. Ice time is such a premium. that their games are scheduled at midnight on a weekday.
I'm a little too old for that. I'm usually in bed by 9 o'clock, 10. So none of my games are ever that late. The league that I currently play in, it's on hold now and everything else is. It's located in South Jersey, and we play teams from the tri-state area. So we play Delaware, we play Pennsylvania. I think our furthest competitors are in North Jersey. That's a trek to 2-hour drive. The league that we play in mandates all games cannot start later than 7 o'clock on a Sunday, and it's only Saturday, Sunday games, which make life so much easier.
I see.
And then once a year, the team that I play in, the New Jersey Jaguars, we go to a country somewhere in Eastern Europe because it's, like you said, cost. So we try to go to places where the cost can be a little low. And we take with us some donated equipment, and we play hockey over there against their local teams. And it's just for fun. But overall, it is an expensive sport, whether it's the ice time, whether it's the equipment. But it's one of those things. You can always buy the equipment secondhand. And then whenever you want to upgrade, just upgrade one item at a time. That's how I did it.
What's the best moment that you can think of for those games where you played over in Europe?
It was just the gear we usually take. We try to make it for the little kid. So we try to help whatever country we go to build a program for the children. We've been to the Ukraine. We've been to Croatia. Hopefully we're going to Romania in August. And just seeing the little kids skate in gear that you just bought for them is a great feeling.
That's a great program. Very good for you.
That kid might be the next Olympian. You never know.
Speaking of Olympic hockey, you are the creator of the Lebanese women's national hockey team. Is that correct?
Yes. The country of Lebanon, which does not have any ice rinks, has an ice hockey team. It has both a men and a women ice hockey team, and we're going to be in the Olympics one day. You just wait.
All right, so just tell the audience exactly how this came to be that you created this national hockey team.
You give me a lot of credit, but all I did was pick up the phone. I called the men's team. They are based out of Montreal. I called the men's team and I said, hey, do you have a women's team? And they said, how much time can you spare to run a women's team? And I'm like, okay, sure. So it started off with me and a friend of mine who lives in North Jersey, and we wanted to have players. So using some open source intelligence, because again, data is in your life. It doesn't matter what it is. You have data. Using open source intelligence, I went on Facebook. I went on college rosters like a stalker, and anybody whose last name sounded Arabic, I would send them a message, and I'd say, hey, are you by any chance Lebanese? And then I'd email the coaches and say, do you know any Lebanese players? And they'd get back to me. They're like, yeah, we know somebody, or somebody graduated. Here's their email, contact information. And within a couple of months of doing that, we had 14 players. Within 1 year of our first meeting, those 14 players, we had about 20 to 30, and now we're at 40 players for the Lebanese ice hockey program for the women. But none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for the parents who support their kids and help them grow into the sport, and yet keep them saying, hey, you are Lebanese, be proud of it. Here, let's play hockey, which is not a Lebanese sport. None of this would have happened if it wasn't for the men's team. They're the ones who contacted the International Ice Hockey Federation, that's the Olympic body over ice hockey, and said, how can we be inducted? They're the ones who contacted the Lebanese government and said, will you put us under your umbrella? So all I did was come up with the idea. They ran with it.
Wow. I think you're being modest. This is fantastic. And I really do hope that someday the Lebanese women's hockey team makes it to the Olympics. And I hope
not far-fetched.
I hope you are giving credit. I want to hear Bob Costas say your name.
It's not far-fetched. Most of our players are either American or Canadian.
I'm going to move on to the next segment. This is a segment that I call Quick Queries. It is one-word answers that I'm looking for. I don't want any explanation. I just want the first answer that comes to your head, and I want you to answer as quickly as possible.
All right.
Sound good? Okay. 20 questions. Here we go. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Sandwich.
Do you consider camping near running water facilities to be camping or glamping?
Glamping.
Which NHL hockey team is your least favorite?
Pittsburgh.
Cincinnati chili, yay or nay?
Nay.
Is the ski mask symbol the best map symbol for robberies and burglaries?
Yes.
Who is a better hockey player, Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin?
Ovechkin.
Is it ever okay to cross the lines on a link chart?
Yes.
Do you prefer cats or dogs?
Cats.
Should analysts have a remote connection to the department's data?
Yes.
Which is more annoying when you're watching hockey in the stands? Folks going to their seats while play is going on, or folks who do not understand offsides?
Fans who do not understand offside.
Would you rather work on a map, link chart, or bulletin?
Map.
Which are you most looking forward to visiting for the first time? Australia or Antarctica?
Antarctica.
Do you prefer cupcakes or donuts?
Cupcakes.
Is it better to be too early or just minutes late?
Too early.
Hiking, do you prefer the mountains or the woods?
Mountains.
When you go to the movies, is it candy or popcorn?
Popcorn.
The toilet paper roll, under or over?
Whichever.
Which gave you a greater emotional impact? Visiting Chernobyl or Machu Picchu?
Chernobyl.
Beach house or lake house?
Beach house.
More satisfying, teaching or consulting?
Teaching.
All right, very good. And I have a bonus question for you. What is your favorite phrase in the Arabic language?
Yalla.
Which is?
It's a word that means let's go, or come on, or okay, or pretty much anything.
And pronounce it
Very
again. Very
versatile word. Yalla.
Yalla.
Y-A-L-L-A.
Yalla. And then finally, your mom's quite the character from what I understand, and from time to time has some interesting sayings or funny moments. Can you give me a funny story about your mom?
Well, I have to preface it by saying that my mother's first language is not English, and it's not her second language either. So she struggles a little bit. We've been in the U.S. for about 25 years now, and my mother still struggles with English.
Mm-hmm.
She can watch the show Lost and understand the entire premise more than I do, but she can't speak English.
Oh, wow.
So when my uncle came and he was asking me, what do I teach? And I say computer forensics. And he asked me, Arabic, okay, I understand computer, but what's forensics? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, how do I explain forensics? So my mother, the linguist, says, hookers. She catches hookers. And I'm like, no, Mom, hackers, not hookers.
That's great. That's great. And that's just a little bit, hackers versus hookers is just a little bit different. The data is just a little bit different for those that might not know, right?
She knew what I did, just couldn't really say it.
Oh, very good. Very good. Sally, you've been a great guest. I end every show with a segment I call Words to the World, where I give the guest the final say. And so this is your time to just deliver whatever message you want to the world, whatever you're into, whatever message you want to. This is your time. So Sally, what are your words to the world?
I really have 3 different advice. And for whoever's listening, for analysts everywhere, new ones going into the field, clean data is essential. Garbage in, garbage out. And you'll never be successful if you don't have support from your leadership. Having that support is paramount. So work on it and get them to believe in your message. And finally, for people everywhere, take that leap of faith. Take a risk and step out of your comfort zone. You'll never know what you're capable of and what you can accomplish otherwise. I went to Chernobyl. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't take a risk. I hiked to Machu Picchu. Again, it's all about stepping out of my comfort zone. Before that, I've never even camped. And since then, I love it. So just take that risk and take that leap of faith.
Excellent, Sally. Well, I like to tell each guest, you've given me enough to talk bad about you later. But I do appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck, and be safe. And thank you for joining me today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Elder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.